platforms, that replication of that data, like continual reentry of the same information on these different platforms. That's probably the biggest inefficiency we have today.
That history is important of knowing when it got logged, how it workflowed, when it changed.
If I start a job and I have no visibility into where my hard dollars are going to get deployed, I have to start with an ounce of distrust.
These are the true stories
of the shared pains
facing designers,
builders,
inspectors,
and operators
on our quest to
streamline collaboration
in the digital age.
Find out what happens
when industry and technology
stop playing nice
and start getting real.
We are the Construction Progress
Coalition.
And this is the Shared Pains Podcast.
Welcome to the Construction Shared Pains Podcast. My name is Sasha Reed, and as your host, it's my role to help all of us gain new perspective on the systemic changes necessary for design and construction to thrive in the digital age. As we bring a close to our three-part series on the investment in innovation, we transition from deciding how to measure success to exposing the importance of culture as a tool to combat burnout and generate breakthroughs. Dan, you've been pretty insistent on doing an episode focused on burnout.
I was home all of November for 5 days. Right after Thanksgiving, literally got home Sunday night. Monday morning, both me and the girlfriend got in a cab to the airport. I literally turned down the British consulate in Chicago to just come home and sit at home. I was just like, no, I'm tired. Thank you for thinking of me, but I want to sit.
It's such a good topic. And I have a feeling at this time of year, everyone's doing this. They're sitting back, thinking about what they really want, looking at how much they're investing. Is it worth it? So I think this one is super timely.
So I think something to note for this episode. Mm-hmm. Sorry, we've been silent for a little bit. It has been a hell of a year. And this is the best topic to talk about.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to wrap up the season.
Okay, Nathan, who are the guest perspectives helping us move from burnout to breakthrough today?
Sasha, our first interview discussion comes from the CDX Hub at AEC Next, where Dan and I sat down with fellow delegates.
I'm Alison Hart. I'm with Mortensen Construction. I manage a team called Project Solutions. We are very field-focused, looking to improve technology for our project sites. Our main goal was to just kind of minimize the butt in the chair that spends 2 weeks, or low man on the totem pole, that gets stuck building that crazy submittal log.
Also representing the contractor's perspective.
Jonathon Grammer, Director of Quality with Rogers O'Brien Construction. We're a general contractor based out of Texas.
A lot of this technology burnout we're experiencing today stems from a dilemma between Alison's need for...
That history is important of knowing when it got logged, how it workflowed, when it changed. I think that's probably our most important thing, just to know that versioning and history of and timestamp of when everything moved.
And Jonathon's need to avoid
that replication of that data, like we've talked about before, just continual reentry of the same information on these different platforms.
Here to debate technology's role in creating and solving these shared pains is
Mark Cisweski. I am the director of our Western operations here at Revizto. It's been great being in the CPC booth today and hearing about all the different workflows and looking at common data environment.
In the show notes, you'll find a CDX webinar that breaks down how Revizto is leveraging API integration to address our efficiency burnout.
Before the integration with Procore, it was a double data entry. So you're obviously logging your docs in one area, and then you're also loading them into Revizto. And then once something becomes an RFI, you're taking that log, you're exporting it, and you're re-uploading it to Procore.
Addressing data loss and double entry burnout is certainly a top priority for
Satyam Verma here from Pipe. I manage partnerships and integrations.
What we're excited to work on with Pipe is to tap into our renewable energy groups, where they don't have a traditional spec book, but a huge product data that's very repeatable.
I'm really here to understand and be part of the conversation of what are the most effective workflows for all the different stakeholders across the AEC project management lifecycle.
Our entire jobs as leaders, innovators, thought leaders are to make the lives of people in our industry better. Whether it's through innovation in software, whether it's innovation through process and procedures, or just getting back to the basics. Everything that we do at the fundamental level is going to change the industry because it makes people's lives better.
Before introducing our final guest perspective, I'll give some context with a short clip from his keynote address to 4,000 construction professionals at the Groundbreak conference in Phoenix.
We have not stopped working in silos. And that's where we're missing this one important key element in order for us to untap this ability for us to get efficient. There's a direct correlation between how connected and aligned project teams are to their outcome of success. Our mission has been and always will be to connect everybody in construction on a global platform.
That's Tooey Courtemanche, founder and CEO of Procore Technologies. Sasha, you were with me in the audience. What do you think?
It highlights more than ever the systemic challenges of perspectives. These perspectives are not aligned to succeed. And that's what technology has done, is it's exposed that.
That next morning, Sasha and I sat down with Tooey to dig into several messages from his keynote, including...
You mentioned analog to digital, and that's a huge thing that we're talking about with CPC is this analog mindset to digital mindset. And explain kind of the pre-2008, like the dot-com era, when you consider that first transition. What was going on in that analog to digital phase?
Well, as everything, there was a continuum of activity. But if I go way back to when I first started this around 2000, nobody was using any sort of technology on a job site. A lot of our customers back then were, or the people, the prospects, they were using courier services. They were literally getting an RFI that was wet signatured, and they would hire and pay somebody to come pick it up from their office and take it to somebody else. I mean, that's analog. And by the way, just a shout out to you. You do so much for our industry, and every time I hear your name, it's always about elevating our industry, and so thank you so much.
Well, and thank you to Procore, because a lot of these efforts that go back to the COSA days of we need standards, and people say, oh, but no one would ever do that. I go, well, yeah, but five years ago, Procore wasn't as much in the conversation. Now, since then, the whole open API, I mean, you guys have really pushed others, so thank you for pushing the industry forward as well.
Hey, it's a great partnership, Nathan. Thanks so much, man.
CPC also wishes to thank Revizto, Pipe, Mortensen Construction, Rogers O'Brien Construction, together with the rest of our 41 member companies representing AEC industry and technology perspectives. By partnering between data standards, governing authorities, and industry member organizations, we can achieve our mission to produce grassroots data governance in construction. See the complete list of CPC supporters at constructionprogress.org/membership. Let's face it, the road of innovation is long and windy with plenty of bumps along the way. The influx of technology investment has not accelerated the pace of change. On today's episode, we digest the symptoms of innovation burnout before we debate the root causes behind it. When leadership decides that culture is how you attract and retain future talent within AEC, a breakthrough is required at all levels to deliver the business transformations required to stay competitive in the digital age. Let's digest. Dan, what are the symptoms of innovation burnout, and what byproducts do they create?
You get to a point where you feel like there is no moving forward. You just try and try. It's just keep hitting your head on a brick wall. What is it, 7 stages of grieving?
Because there is actually a 5 stages of burnout. Googling and I think, a lot of these chronic exhaustion and physical illness, to the point where people are literally not coming into work because they're so burnt out.
I want to work in a place where I can make a change. And if you're not enabling me to make that change, I'm just going to go to somewhere else where I can get the same incentive, same vacation, same pay. Organizations need to make that shift. Nobody needs to work for your organization, especially in our industry. It needs to be a cultural shift that people look at your organization and say, I want to work there. Microsoft now has, through their machine learning and analytics, a way to show engagement with employees, because engagement is one of the signs of burnout. When this employee, when their average email takes 5 minutes to respond or 5 minutes to send, and now they're at 15, 20, 30 minutes or day, 2 days, 3 days, they can now prove that they're not being as engaged and they're showing signs of burnout.
And that's what technology has done, is it's exposed that and made us have to step back and not put so much pressure on the technology to solve it, and start to create means and methods to leverage things like culture to make sure the humans are aligned.
I keep getting like everyone from CPC. I originally started at like GC or specialty contractors, and they're slowly going to software now.
It is a trend as more and more of us face the crisis mode, right? Stage 4. Because we've had too long of chronic symptoms, and yet we still call it going to the dark side.
Right? Well, I do.
Okay, enough dwelling. Let's debate. What are the root causes of innovation burnout in AEC, and how can we categorize them?
We got it down to 3 root causes. 2 hit on the first one, lack of trust.
Right now, there's so much opacity. An owner doesn't know much what's going on with the GC and GC to the sub, just because there's that analog jump and there's just not a lot of transparency. And an owner said it really well to me the other day. He said, if I start a job and I have no visibility into where my hard dollars are going to get deployed and what the product I'm going to get at the end is going to look like, I have to start with an ounce of distrust.
That distrust is often influenced by our second root cause, lack of incentive.
Because our industry is a team sport, it's if we could connect everybody, now you can have a whole picture across all the data, which is what a project is an amalgamation of a bunch of data, and to make better decisions.
In order to do that, we must collaborate with our external project stakeholders.
We can get a lot more effective and efficient if this submittal process starts with an architect or engineer.
As Satyam has come to learn, this is easier said than done.
We would probably be selling to them if we saw that as a realistic expectation within the next 3 to 5 years, and unfortunately we don't. It's really coming down on the GC shoulders to move the industry forward, because you're the only group with the resources, the need, and the desire to take that next step forward.
That cultural shift starts by addressing our last root cause, a lack of understanding.
And I'd say that even today, the fact that our stakeholders are all using different technology, we're still analog, because though you're digitizing your business, when it comes to sending an approval or something else, Procore assists that, sends it to somebody, but in general, you're leaving your tech and you're going to a paper-based solution to go, and those handoffs are where all of the inefficiencies we believe come from in construction.
This is something that we can get a lot more effective and efficient with if this submittal process starts with an architect or engineer. Maybe submittals should be taken off the GC plate.
We could pass that product data along, but we're putting more onus on the design team that they don't traditionally have, because they're expecting us to do that first level check. Same thing with shop drawings and everything else. We do perform that first level check, even though it causes that re-entry of data to happen. If we're cut out of the puzzle, now it's all on the design team to do the entire check, and there's no filter.
I think when I talk to business owners, they'll tell me that this is great. I installed all the software. I am now looking at the data to see if I can make sense out of the data. And as I mentioned in the keynote, we haven't seen the massive transformation of the efficiency gains that every other industry that's gone through this have seen.
The burnout is this analog to digital. Like, guys, you're unaware of what is possible because your minds aren't wrapped around it. But then once you do wrap your mind around it, then it's like, oh, well, shit. But now I have to get everyone else's minds wrapped around it because it's a weakest link solution.
And I think that's what brought it up at dinner.
Sasha and I had dinner with Mike Rowe last night. It was a lot of fun.
I was trying to tie in what you and I were talking about.
Sasha and Mike are both like such deep thinkers that I'll just be like, isn't that cool? They'll go like 9 levels down and bring Socrates into the conversation.
This is directly related to those 2 terms that you were struggling to remember.
And Ignacia and Para can pull it from his TED Talk.
Anagnorisis and peripatia. Anagnorisis and peripatia.
I remember I listened to it 6 times to try to make sure I captured the root of what the philosophers were trying to say. Mm-hmm. And it's that idea of what we think is right and how we think we are going to bring about the change versus what needs to happen, and the understanding, the shared perspectives that need to be able to see and hear each other and have a space and a forum to come to a common or mutual understanding.
We're reaching an era now where we're going to have 5 generations in the workforce. The new generation kind of responds to things a little bit differently than the older generations, where it was kind of churn, burn, brute force, get it done. Don't really care how long it took. We just do it. Whereas now the new generation is, I don't want to do that. It's not efficient. I want efficiency. So
for the last 10 years, we've really put a lot of eggs in the technology basket of this is what's going to solve our problems. And what we've discovered is it only uncovers root problems, the root of these issues that really have very little to do with technology and everything to do with psychology.
People call the new generation lazy or, whiny or whatever, but it's just different.
Entering the decide section, we've been talking about breakdowns in trust, incentive, and understanding. What mental barriers exist between generations that become a source of the burnout?
Everyone's going to get burnt out. Everyone's going to burn out at some point in their career. Anger sets in, the fatigue sets in, you don't know who to be mad at. Is it, I'm not telling this right? Am I not explaining this right? It happens, but how do you respond and how do you build an environment to deal with that burnout and raise those employees back up?
This is how I give myself solace. I look for large top 5 consulting firms to tell me my life doesn't suck and it isn't meaningless and all this work I'm doing isn't meaningless. So I've been searching a lot of McKinsey reports lately just to make myself feel better. And they've done an entire series on culture and innovation and what causes innovation to fail. And they've done it on macro scale projects, and they've done it on enough projects that they've been able to say, okay, we have an understanding of the key things that cause an innovation to fail. First, identifying is leadership involved? Do you have top-down buy-in where leadership is nodding their head and pushing for the change to happen? Number 2, do you have dedicated resources on staff there who are dedicated to the success of that implementation? Not 20% of their job, not 50% of their job, but at least 80% of their time is dedicated to seeing that through.
A lot of what I do is somewhat internal consulting is probably the best way to put it. We're starting to do technology kickoffs for every project, things like that. So really navigating them down this kind of river of technology.
Third, what does success look like? Have you determined what good looks like and what success looks like? And what business problem are you trying to solve with this technical innovation?
And it's hard to track that. It's hard to say, well, this project was successful because Dan taught them how to use PlanGrid, and PlanGrid was awesome on this project. So therefore, Dan should get a promotion and a raise and a big bonus. Come on, you can't track that.
A plus B equals C.
Correct. We've talked on other episodes about how do you apply metrics to this stuff. And I would say a lot of it's just qualitative. Did he have good conversation? Did he put me in touch with the people that I needed to speak to? Is there more collaboration down there? Is there more innovative thought, knowledge sharing and thought leadership?
And the fifth and final one is the organization healthy enough to sustain the innovation? Can the organization even sustain it?
The dip before the rise, right?
Correct.
If you're seeing your retention go up, because everyone has a retention problem, if you're seeing your retention going up, hey, we're doing something right.
Think of how many projects you've been piloting, entrepreneuring, knowing you only have 2 of those 5 factors, hoping that we're going to create incremental change, which we have. But this is why burnout is so high now, because we're really struggling to get the systemic change that needs to occur, which really needs to be that top-down buy-in from the leaders.
It's funny. I was talking to a customer last night, and he said, I can perform flawlessly on a project as a general contractor, but if one player doesn't do their job, everybody suffers and we can all fail.
That was one of the best quotes I think I've heard from an interview this year. It was fantastic. He hit the nail on the head with where we are as an industry, and it's truly a major issue.
This frustration of why hasn't BIM solved this stuff? Why hasn't, any of this stuff solved? It's because all of the technology in AEC is this weak link solution that it only works when everybody's on board with it.
Now, if it's a transparent, open ecosystem, and I can see that there's great intent and that things are getting done that I want to get done, and things are being bought out the way I anticipated them being bought out, we will start from a position of trust, but verify. And that's the transformation. It'll just change the way construction is delivered.
Where we were as an industry 10 years ago is night and day difference. Now, we have to look at the other sides of this equation, and people and culture. We have not kept pace. We just simply haven't. So we can't be too upset if we feel like technology hasn't been that easy, but it hasn't solved every piece of the puzzle for us.
If you're an owner, you look at your project portfolios differently than if you're a general contractor. Or if you're a subcontractor, you care about your crews, your material and equipment more than you care about a project-centric view like a general contractor does. So there's that aspect. We have to make sure that each player has an experience that's relevant to the way they run their business.
Bringing these perspectives together to talk about, dive even deeper on RFIs and submittals and how they lead to burnout.
Yep.
And where do we find breakthroughs within them?
Through understanding what's in it for me. Make sure you're understanding that person sitting across the table from you.
The middle itself is the tracking of the approval of that element. So you're not cutting out the element from the job, you're just possibly cutting out the approval for that particular element on that particular project.
Disrupt yourself or be disrupted. And this is a great opportunity to disrupt yourself in order to reinvent what your company represents and how it competes in this modern market.
Just because a guy has an iPad doesn't mean we're innovative. That's not the end zone. That's not the A plus B plus C. There's a lot of things that go into this, and it's hard to just say that, this equals that. It's more differential equations than anything.
As the technologist sitting at this table, I'm listening and asking myself, where does technology play a role in all of this?
So really simplifying that process to be able to capture all of your data, whether it's in the field or whether it's in a model, whether it's in CDs, capturing that stuff, identifying that in a communication chat in real time, and then when it becomes an RFI that you need to submit that, you have a track of how that can be pushed to Procore. The beauty of that is it gives everybody additional information about the location of the RFI, what other things it's going to affect. If you're not technical in Navisworks or Revit, it also allows you to get in the model and see, okay, how is this going to affect placement of other things, and is this going to cause issues down the road or delay in our schedule down the road?
I think collectively, as the industry comes together, we are this force of doing what the industry is asking for and delivering on solutions that allow people to be more performant. It's a challenging problem to solve. Number one, because each stakeholder on the job, they need not only their own instance of Procore.
And then once it's in Procore, you always have the ability to go back to Revizto, see where it falls in 2D, see where it falls in 3D, see where it falls in your Revit model. If it's going back to the designer, if it's going back to the civil team, they can see where that's falling based off of the XYZ coordinate.
Brings up a really good point, which is it's not just about Procore to Procore, it's about our partner ecosystem. And 170 folks out there trying to build on our platform to provide solutions for all of these business processes, and Procore to Procore is just one.
Well, and that's why we have Mark from Revizto and Satyam from Pipe, two of, I would say, the front runners in the, if we talk about hub and spoke model, they're both, very strong spokes. Although anymore, Revizto is building so many spokes that they've got a really good play to kind of be that truly agnostic project, accommodated environment platform.
Yep. We had to get this right. We spent a lot of time building the infrastructure to allow for two parties to share data, mutually agree to, securely, which is very important, with the proper level of permissions.
You can restrict if that's going to go back or if it's going to push back to Revizto, and do you want it to push back to Revizto?
And then ultimately, and I know you've been talking about this before, but the inefficiencies in our market can start to melt away because we are more transparent.
Also for the design team, it's allowing them to go back to whatever design software they're utilizing, whether it's Revit or whether it's Tekla or whether it's ArchiCAD, it doesn't really matter.
How do we get people to be confident to share data and know it's done securely and that you're giving only the data that you want? Because there's a lot of fear. Like, I don't want somebody coming into my account and taking my data.
And call me an optimist, but I think there's enough frustration, even at the executive leadership level, of feeling like I've authorized all these technology budgets. I've spent a lot of money on bringing the right people inside, but if I still don't feel like what I'm doing to deliver for the owner is where I hoped my business would be, I have to come back and look at that people component.
People keep asking for an analogy about Procore to Procore, and the analogy I love, which was given to me by Riggs Kubiak, the founder of Honest Buildings, the company that we acquired, was if you've ever stayed in a hotel room and you've had your kids in the adjoining room, there's two doors. And in order to access the passageway, both parties have to open the door, right?
Their chemistry, their collaborative nature, their ability to share information is delivering that outcome to that owner.
So that's where we're getting really close, especially with the new Forma and Procore integrations that that Tom's working on with Rivet can really be that proof of concept.
If RFI collaboration, or lack thereof, has pushed you to burnout, then you'll want to check out the latest CDX report from Electri International. Head to constructionprogress.org/Electri for a free download. When it comes to external shifts in culture and contract, who will drive the change?
It's chaos. I mean, it's complete, utter chaos. Until we get to a point where there's more regulation on what we're doing, how we're tracking it, it can't be the government. I would love to say the CPC can be up there and start doing this regulation and start talking about what the things in the industry needs and how to start trending and tracking. We started with the Electri report with the RFIs. That was a great first step. And how we can pivot and move from that and continue to develop from that.
And that's exactly where the collaboration stakeholder partnerships come in with, whether it's U.S. Institute of Building Documentation or XBRL, Extensible Business Reporting Language, or these other groups that we're, forming together with to help, better communicate their voice to a broader audience and, ensure that everybody is aware of these standards that do already exist. And what's missing is, the process and the contract requirements and the time.
So let's maybe go back to RFIs and that discussion of whether it's a trade contractor, an architect. When is that ideal time to have those discussions, to answer those questions at the project, to really build better standards?
Right in the beginning, because that's kind of when we set our expectations. We we put it in our DAC control. Here's how we're going to communicate. Here's how we're going to save stuff. Naming conventions. That's kind of when you're covering all the nuts and bolts of everything.
We were talking about earlier with the ISO 19650 standard for BIM. It doesn't tell you exactly how to do it. It just tells you the steps that you need to do in order to create it. You need something that vague in order to be interpreted at the country and state and local and project level. But we have to have some sort of structure to begin with. And if the government's not there, then that's a little bit of why we're in this mess in the first place.
The rate of which innovation occurs from a technology standpoint is rapidly increasing. But is it possible for mindsets to change and keep pace with technology?
I believe there's a way that projects can be delivered differently, that instill a high level of trust between the players, and that set up shared goals and objectives across the teams. And it could take the adversarial relationship between owner, GC, and sub out of the equation and help also contribute to a more efficient market.
It all comes back to WIFM. What's in it for me? Who really benefits from the tech adoption?
The reason why these CDX initiatives have focused on cross-company, because it's more likely that a company-to-company workflow will, with an owner involved, can solve both the top-down, I need the data problem, and the bottom-up, I need efficiency.
We have built the technical infrastructure that we're confident that will allow for this to happen. Now, Procore is a wide variety of tools and products that need to have this implemented, so it's going to take some time to get there, but I would say arguably the hard work has been done. A lot of that infrastructure has been built.
I understand the existing mindset, which is about controlling and having a more closed system than an open system. But it is equally exciting to see that the corner we have turned based on what technology is allowing us to do allows us to focus on a very different mindset, a very different way of operating.
One thing it's interesting, like in this advanced society, how often we forget the standards that we rely upon. Like even just like having an internet connection, or like basic things that now as much as we can't live without.
This idea of CDX certification and really looking at chicken and egg, who creates it first? Is the end user who says this is the data we care about, or is it the software company saying this is the data we're agreeing to share? By nature, everything should be just flowing and going between individuals.
Yep.
But it needs language around it. A special thank you to our guest CDX delegates, Alison Hart, Mark Cisweski, Jonathon Grammer, and Satyam Verma. And a huge thank you to Tooey and the Groundbreak team for inviting us to showcase CDX and generate digital literacy across the industry. The solution to our AEC Innovation shared pains requires as much psychology as they do technology. What is the role of culture and shared language to generate those breakthroughs?
Everybody else around you is going to be utilizing this. So you're going to realize, all right, I need to invest some time into this or I need to leave.
The breakthrough at the leadership level is recognizing that the way that you were led isn't the way that you should lead.
Your levers for effectiveness is no longer brute force. Your lever for effectiveness is now trust, autonomy.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget empathy too, right? I mean, I think whether you're Jeff Sample as like the most empathetic IT guy you'll ever meet,
God bless him,
or Alison in her role at Mortensen, really like she should care more about everything being in one database and everything kind of being single locked up. But I mean, she's probably the most interested in all these different tools like Pipe and Revizto and other things that can, help connect data through Procore and whatever other accounting and ERP systems that they may have in their technology stack. But it takes that sort of a mindset that says, well, no, like what's important is that we need operational efficiency and to get the data, not one or the other. And that understanding that balance, and that's really where the trust and transparency comes in, right? Is that there is no silver bullet.
You get the outcome you want, but you have to give the language to create that bridge between the current state to the future state.
There's going to be more efficiencies in the industry. There's going to be bigger and better projects. There's going to be more profitability all across the board. It's just going to get better. But it takes a cultural change to get there.
This concludes season 2 of the Construction Shared Pains podcast. If you like what you've heard thus far, log on to your favorite podcast provider and write us a quick review. It helps more than you would think.
Fail on our part, we called for people to submit things through the web form, and I didn't set up any notifications. We have so many submissions.
Shit. I'm excited. What did they submit?
One gentleman submitted, his shared pain around transmittals. I think we need transmittals. The problem is we're doing analog transmittals, not digital transmittals.
Right. That goes to the heart of a mindset of business process that can be completely shifted based on technology. Thank you to everyone who submitted their shared pains at constructionprogress.org/podcast. In season 3, we'll start digging into more of your ideas. Until then, thank you for listening to the Construction Shared Pains podcast. We look forward to joining you here next time.
Sweet.